Hello guys and welcome to my new video. So today I decided to cover Holy Paladin. So I've been playing Holy Paladin for a little bit. I decided to do a kind of a beginner guide into how to play Holy Paladin, what are the talents that I find to be very useful in raid scenarios, the stat priority, relics, legendaries, and the gameplay in itself. Now first of all, Holy Paladin, I think it's quite a fun class to play. It's a big transition from a Restoration Druid to a Holy Paladin. It's a lot more direct style of healing with very few hots, actually only kind of one hot. But let's first look at the talent choices. I'll go through basically all the tiers. First of all, in tier 15 we have Bestowed Fate, Light's Hammer, Crusader Smite. Now Crusader Smite is basically only a 5-man talent choice and you won't be using it in raids, and this guide is mainly concentrated on raid scenarios, so we won't cover that. Bestowed Fate is basically a heal that's going to detonate after 5 seconds. So something that you place on your tank and after 5 seconds it's going to heal them. Now there's a lot of little mechanics that you can kind of cheese with it. Like for example, you can actually place Bestowed Fate on yourself, like after the cooldown's ready, Bestowed Fate on yourself and like heal targets with Light of the Martyr. Light of the Martyr is going to take health away from you, and after that it's going to heal you. You can also have tips and tricks like if you're running a Beacon of Virtue, you can place Bestowed Fate, and if you feel you're going to use Beacon of Virtue very quickly, you can use it, and then it's going to go into your Beacon of Virtue healing as well. So there are tips and tricks around Bestowed Fate, but honestly, tier 15 talents are not going to make or break your Holy Paladin. These are a decent HPS increases. I mean, nothing crazy. Like, I mean, you can go between Bestowed Fate and Light's Hammer. These are probably the only two choices in raid scenario that are viable. Light's Hammer I would recommend using in AoE situations. Let's say for example in Desolate Host, in the Spirit Realm, when everyone's grouped up together, you can just place this spell and heal up the whole targets. Let me just show you how it would actually look, because I actually don't use it as much as possible. But so you can, it's a circular kind of spell. Desolate Host, Harjatan, when Harjatan is about to swipe and deal loads of damage in front of the players, you can just place it and you can heal up the players. Now this does have a minute cooldown, so you kind of need to make sure to use it when there's a lot of people in it and when there's a lot of AoE damage. If you don't feel up for the challenge of actually timing this, Bestowed Fate is something that is very easy to use. You just place it on a tank or someone who's going to take damage in the next 5 seconds. Like I said, no crazy HPS increases here. It's just something like quality of life and things like that. Tier 30, probably the only choice here is Rule of the Law. Rule of the Law is actually really interesting talent choice, mainly because it increases the range of your heals and reach of Mastery Light Bringer by 50% for 10 seconds. So by default you have a 40-yard heal range. By activating Rule of Law, which you have 2 charges of, you can see here, your range is going to increase to 60 yards. So you can see in the video here that I wasn't able to actually reach the targets from where I was how far I was away from them. By activating Rule of Law, I was able to heal them. Now keep in mind, by activating Rule of Law, it's going to interact with your mastery. So it means the way a mastery works, we can actually cover mastery. The way a mastery works as a Holy Paladin is very different from any other healer. And for example, let's first see what mastery does. Proximity to your target causes your spells to heal them for up to whatever amount based on your mastery you have. So that means if you're going to heal melee, you should probably be close to melee. If you're going to heal ranged, you should probably be close to them. So 90% of cases you're a healer that's going to be in melee ranged, healing tanks, healing all the melee DPS and things like that. Now with Rule of Law, this allows you to kind of like stray away from the melee, go into the ranged camp or whatever, and to actually, or even stay into melee range, pop Rule of Law and heal ranged for increased mastery heals. And like I said before, the main thing that I use it for, popping Rule of Law, is increase the range of my heals. Keep in mind that your Blessing of Protection or Blessing of Freedom are not increased. Their heal range or their activation range is not increased by Rule of Law. So if you're using grid or whatever to show your heal range, and you see people, when you press Rule of Law, you see people actually going into your range, you might not be able to pop Blessing of Protection if they need to be saved. So be aware of that fact. So like I said, Rule of Law is actually a pretty handy talent. You have 2 charges of it. Most of the time I pop 1 when I feel I need it, and I always save 1 charge for the moments when I'm really far away from range and range are dying and things like that. A really handy talent for raid scenarios, almost kind of useless in 5-man. Or at least not advisable in 5-man. For tier 45, here it doesn't really matter what you pick. I picked Repentance purely for the fact because I have Zephus, Legendary, and it's one way of proccing it. Blinding Light does proc it, but the target needs to be dazable or whatever. Tier 60 talent is really interesting choice here. For raiding scenario, I would go something with, I'll go along with Aura of Sacrifice. Aura of Sacrifice is the most widely used aura for paladins. The way you read it is, while you are above 75% health, 10% of all the damage taken by allies within 10 yards is redirected to you. So don't really care about any of these primary effects because they're actually quite little. They don't really provide a lot. Like, I mean, they can be useful, but it's not what makes auras really powerful. What makes auras really powerful is while Aura Mastery is active. So you have a 3-minute cooldown, Aura Mastery, which is basically equivalent to a big healer cooldown like Trank and things like that. So empowering your chosen aura increases its radius by 40 yards for 8 seconds. So basically 40 yards is your healing range by default. So what this means that while Aura Mastery is active, 15% of all effective healing you deal is replicated to all allies in the aura. Now, what this means is that when you pop Aura Mastery, if you, like, this is really important, for the 8 seconds, you need to make sure you're going to use the most optimal spell rotation. And you need to heal the people whose health is below, like, who lost some amount of health. Best case scenario, you see someone at 10% HP, you pop your Aura Mastery and you Holy Shock them. And then if they go up, if it crits for a lot, that's a massive amount of healing. Like, you can't even comprehend how powerful Aura of Sacrifice can be. It's just insane. Like, one of the most optimal spell rotations after you use Aura of Sacrifice. Use Aura of Sacrifice, you Holy Shock, you can cast around 3 Flash of Lights, and then your Holy Shock, or even your Holy Shock should go back up, and you can cast Holy Shock again within the duration of 8 seconds. Now this is going to change depending on how much haste you have, so this is just a very general overview. You want to make sure that you're going to cast 2 Holy Shocks in the duration if it's possible. You can replace Flash of Light with Light of Dawn. It's also, Light of Dawn also affects the amount of healing Aura of Sacrifice is going to redistribute. Again, has to be effective healing. So this is the most used one because it shows up on the meters. Devotion Aura is another really good aura. Allies within 10 yards take 20% reduced damage split over the number of allies in the aura. Now, this is the passive effect. So basically, if I spec into it by myself, you can see here I have the number shown of how much damage reduction I get. I get 20% damage reduction. So if I join a party of 5 people, and you can see that the range is 10 yards, which is very small. If all of the 5 people are close within each other, they get passive 4% reduced in damage, which is nothing to be sniffed at. It's not too bad at all. But when you activate your Aura Mastery, it's going to enable 20% reduction across the whole raid within 40-yard range. So what that means is basic for 8 seconds. So if that means there's a boss that's about to deal a huge amount of damage, you need to pop it before the damage comes in. So knowing damage patterns is really important here. Or let's say a boss starts doing continuous damage over like a couple of seconds, you can pop it there and reduce the whole raid's damage by 20%. Most of the time, damage reduction is going to be better than effective healing. Damage is just easier to reduce the damage people take than to heal them up. But a lot of this is probably your progression aura. Devotion aura will probably be for progression fights. Aura of Sacrifice can fit into progression fights, but it's mainly used by Holy Paladins in a way because Devotion aura does not show up on meters. Aura of Sacrifice does, so a lot of people want to look better and things like that for the raid leaders and etc. And they use Aura of Sacrifice to look better in the meters. Aura of Sacrifice has its own uses in progression fights, but Devotion aura just tends, a lot of the fights, it will provide or save more people. But that's up to discussion as well. Aura of Mercy is something that you would use if you don't know how to use Aura of Sacrifice or Devotion Aura. Aura of Sacrifice I still feel is the most skill-based aura, because like I said, when you pop it, you need to make sure within those 8 seconds to heal up the people who've lost HP. You need to make sure to not overheal. Those 8 seconds. In those 8 seconds, you want to make sure you don't move and you just cast as much as you can. I mean, with Aura of Sacrifice, it's also worth mentioning with the legendary Marat's Cloak, your Aura of Sacrifice rotation kind of changes. You kind of want to throw in your Light of Dawns and even Light of the Martyr to heal up people. That becomes a really good option. But that, I'm not going to go into it. It's a bit more advanced. Aura of Mercy, like I said, restores HP to restores to 3 injured allies within 10 yards. So basically, it's passive healing. And when you activate Aura Mastery, it passively heals all of the people in the raid. Now, this is something that requires no skill whatsoever. I mean, the only real advantage where I see Aura Mastery could work really well is Sisters. You know, the part where there is where you need to heal up the shields. And what happens if you need to heal up the shields but no one takes damage and you expect an Aura of Sacrifice? You do 0 healing. If no one takes damage during those shields, you cannot Holy Shock anyone, you cannot Flash a Light anyone. So there is no effective healing, so therefore your Aura of Sacrifice is useless. While Aura of Mercy, if no one takes damage during those shields, you just pop Aura of Mercy and it's just going to passively heal them up. It's going to break out the shields and it's going to work pretty well. That's probably the only time that I actually seen Aura of Mercy to be doing pretty well, or like a really obvious choice for Aura of Mercy. Otherwise, Aura of Sacrifice or Devotion Aura for Raid, it seems to be a really, really good choice. 75 talents. I mean, a lot of these are quite viable, and I've seen people actually spec into them. I still feel that the best one well, my most favorite one is Holy Avenger. It's 1.5 minute cooldown, increase your haste by 30%, your Holy Shock healing by 30% for 20 seconds. This is like a mini Bloodlust or Heroism that you get for your Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin's all about cooldown management and having an additional cooldown to link with your, let's say, Tears Deliverance or during really heavy damage patterns. This seems to work pretty well. I'm not really going to cover other ones for the time being. Now for tier 90, best raid talent would probably be Judgment of Light. I mean, there are choices where Sanctified Wrath can be a choice, but I think most of the people will tend to go with Judgment of Light because of how easy it is. You don't really worry about it at all. It's basically Judgment now applies Judgment Light to the target, causing the next 40 successful attacks against the target to heal the attacker. So it's basically you target the boss and you judge them, and hopefully your UI or whatever has a tracker that lets you know how many stacks of your Judgment of Light are on the boss. You need to keep into account that on multiple ad phases or bosses that have multiple ads, you try to judge those ads as well, rather than just overriding on the boss, because if all the DPS swap over to a priority ad, you want to make sure that the priority ad actually has the judgment on them. But this is very simple passive healing. You don't have to worry about anything. While Sanctified Wrath, Avenging Wrath lasts 25% long, also reduces the Holy Shock cooldown by 50%. It's more to do with really managing your wings cooldown. If you don't pop wings at the right time, your talent is almost wasted. So let's look at tier 100. Tier 100 is actually super interesting, way more interesting than any other healers, or at least Resto Druid ones. The rating choice here would be Beacon of Fate. So first of all, max the second target is Beacon, mimicking the effects of Beacon of Light. Your heals will now heal both of your beacons, but at 20% reduced effectiveness. What does that mean? You have 2 beacons now. You can place it on 2 of your main tanks. This works super well with tier 24 set. Even though tier 24 set, a lot of it tends to go into overhealing. But on average, tier 24 set in itself does around 3% healing. 3% healing is actually not too bad at all, depending on how much tank damage there is. If the tanks are getting hammered, this is going to do a lot more healing. Beacon of Fate is the best choice for raids scenarios, but there are exceptions. Beacon of Lightbringer is a definite choice for fights where, let's say, there are no 2 targets that are going to take continuous damage. Let's say, for example, Demonic Inquisition, when one of the tanks have to go to the cage. your beacons are not going to reach them. So you only have one target that takes constant damage, and then another target that you're like, should I put it on melee DPS, range DPS? Most likely it's going to overheal like hell. So it's, or like even Desolate Host. Desolate Host inside Spirit Realm, there's only one tank there. You don't know who to put it on. So Beacon of Lightbringer actually becomes a very, very decent choice here, especially because Mastery, Lightbringer now increases your healing based on your target's proximity to either you or your Beacon of Light, whichever is closer. And your healing rage and rage of Light of Dawn are increased by 30%. Light of Dawn increase is super, super nice. Mastery Lightbringer, the passive of Mastery is actually super, super interesting. I don't want to go too much into detail, but what it basically means with this, you can beacon your target and you can stay in range camp. You can stay in range camp and you can heal the melee, and you can heal, the melee is going to be around the tank, the range are going to be around you. So if you heal the melee, you don't have to worry about your mastery dropping off, because your mastery is going to, the distance is going to calculate, it's going to calculate your beacon target, so your tank. So the closer the melee are to the tank, the more healing you do. And if you're in the range camp, the closer you are to the range, and when you heal the ranged, the more healing you're going to do to the ranged. So short explanation, with Beacon of Lightbringer, usually stand in range camp or where a lot of ranged are, and just heal. And that's it. And your master is going to be a lot better. That's it. Beacon of Virtue is purely a 5-man scenario. I've never seen anyone using it in raids. It's really, really strong, but this guide is more about, well, I guess I can cover a bit of it. Applies Beacon of Light to your target and 3 injured allies within 30 yards for 8 seconds. Your heals will heal all of them for 40% of the amount healed. Your Flash of Light and Holy Light on the targets will also refund mana. So think of it as a 15-second cooldown that lasts for 8 seconds. So there's a very high uptime on this. Think of it as anytime more than 2 or 3 people take damage, you pop your Beacon of Virtue and you just heal either the target with Beacon of Virtue or the people who are not targeted by Beacon of Virtue. If you heal the people who are not affected by Beacon of Virtue, you're going to heal up the target, and you're also going to heal up all the other people. So in 5-man scenarios, this is insanely strong AoE heal. Think of it as an AoE heal that you do AoE healing through your Flash of Light or Light of Dawn or whatever. This is insanely strong cooldown. Works so great, mainly for 5-mans. I don't want to go into too much into 5-mans because that's going to be a 40-minute guide. So this is the basic, or kind of a default talent choice that you would go for a Holy Paladin who's raiding in Tomb of Sargeras or any other content. Now let's look at stat priorities. So stat priority is actually very, very interesting. For Holy Paladins, because of how Crit and Holy Shock interact with each other, Holy Shock, if it crits, it gives you a lot of, it gives you an infusion of light procs. So you want to make sure that your Holy Shock has as close to 100% crit as possible. In order to do that, you need to reach a cap of 50% crit, or 45% if you have tier 19 2-piece, but you probably don't, so it doesn't matter. So 50% crit is an absolute priority. Because of this, crit is valued super high for Holy Paladins. If I'm looking at my spreadsheet right now, I can see that my crit is 1.5 times better than my intellect right now. First of all, intellect actually does, you get a lot more intellect, so the more intellect you have, the less value intellect actually carries. So depending on the amount of intellect you have, you can have a piece of gear that gives you, let's say, versatility and mastery, and you can have a piece of gear that gives you crit, but it's a lot lower item level. There is a possibility that piece that gives you crit is going to be still better. So in order to find out what's your stat priority, you should be using spreadsheet. Zero to Rescue has a really nice spreadsheet for Holy Paladins. But like I said, critical strike is an absolutely #1 stat for Holy Paladins. You should try your best to get 50%. You should try your best to get 50% critical strike in order to cap it. Next would probably be either haste or versatility. Sorry, not haste, mastery or versatility. Mastery and versatility are probably even, mainly because, first of all, I talked about mastery. Proximity to targets causes your spells to heal for whatever amount more. Now, this means that if you if a raid stacks up, you're gonna be doing a lot of healing, and mastery most likely will become your second best stat. Now, what happens if you do a raid or a boss fight where everyone's kind of spread out, ranged all over the place, melee, there's a couple of melee, like I mean, your mastery is gonna drop in value. So in order to kind of get an average look and feel for how strong mastery is, we kind of get a mean, like if there's a boss really stacked up and there's a boss really spread out, mastery still becomes like a second or third best stat. Like I said, if you want to go hardcore and you know the fight is going to be super stacked up, you want to stack mastery as a second choice. Now, versatility by default is just increase your damage and healing and reduces the damage you take. So it's just straight up increases your healing. You kind of increase your healing and reduce your damage you take. There's nothing that you need to worry about it. It's going to work everywhere. It doesn't matter what kind of fight it is. Doesn't matter if there's people stacked up, if they're spread out. Don't care. Just gives you the healing that you need. So that's second to the third best stat. Now your least wanted stat is haste. Now you have to keep in mind that haste does reduce the mana, reduce the casting time of your holy light, your flash of light, and it also reduces the cooldown of your holy shocks and your light of dawn. So you need to keep in mind that haste does have a lot of interaction. The main problem with haste is that the more haste you have, the quicker you go out of mana. So there is a big consideration when stacking haste, or if you're getting haste items, is that the more haste you have, you're most likely going to run out of mana faster. So it is, most of the times it is considered as one of the worst stats for a holy paladin. So crit, master, and verse. Crit, master, and verse are really good. In order to find out the exact stat weights, I'll post my stat weights here as well. But in order to find out for yourself, you should probably use the spreadsheet. Spreadsheet is really good in terms of finding a stat weight. Now I'm going to stop the guide right here, just purely for the fact because it's been such a long guide, and I know a lot of people don't like to watch videos that are long. So I'm going to upload part 2 of the Holy Paladin 7.3 guide, which is going to include the relics, legendaries, and an in-depth look into the Paladin, Holy Paladin gameplay, how to heal, how to use cooldowns and things like that. So that's going to be uploaded in the next day or so, so check out the YouTube channel. Let me know how you feel about this guide, let me know how you feel about the information there, let me know how you feel about playing Holy Paladin. And there's going to be link in descriptions for the part 2, and let me know how you feel about that as well. So thank you for watching this little guide, and I'll see you next time.